Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the next session of CME Palooza Spring. I am Scott Cover, one of the co-moderators of CME Palooza, and I would like to welcome you to this session, which is entitled Pineapple, Pizza, and CPD, Mixing the Right Ingredients for Success. This session is sponsored both by Academic CME and Helio CME. Our co-moderators for this session, interestingly, with the shortest and longest last names in CME, we have Antonio Mayo from Daiichi Sankyo and Amanda Yamragevich from US Health Connect Incorporated. Little known fact, in Poland, Yamragevich is just like Johnson. You can't throw a pierogi without hitting another Yamragevich. Right, Amanda?
That's correct.
Okay, so I'd like to thank first the sponsors for all of our session. First of all, our gold sponsors, Med Learning Group, Medscape Education, and Projects in Knowledge. Our silver sponsors, Academic CME, DKB Med, Daiichi Sankyo, and Global Learning Collaborative, as well as Helio CME, HMP Education, MedLive, and Talem Health. And finally, our bronze sponsors, Answers in CME, Bonum Continuing Education, Catalyst Medical Education, CMEology, Excalibur Medical Education, Global Education Group, Infograph Ed, Integritas Communications, Iridium Continuing Education, MedIQ, Partners for Advancing Clinical Education, Paradigm Medical Communications, Peerview Institute for Medical Education, and Vindico Medical Education. So as with all of our CME Palooza sessions, there are two ways that you can ask questions. You can use the CME Palooza text line to send in your question. The number is 267-666-0CME0263. Or if you are watching this in YouTube, you can click on the watch on YouTube in the lower left-hand corner and enter in questions within the YouTube chat function. We will be monitoring for questions throughout this session. There's been a lot of poll everywhere, a lot of audience response questions throughout this session. So if you have not downloaded the Poll Everywhere app, if you want to do so, you can join the presentation entitled CME Palooza 005 or type in the URL that is there on your screen. We'll be using ARS pretty soon after we get this session started. So have it queued up and ready to go. Finally, please note that the opinions, discussions, and/or conclusions expressed are those of our panelists and do not represent an endorsement by or position of their employer, parent company, or their affiliates. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to Antonio and Amanda to get us started.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate you all for joining us this morning. As Scott alluded to, there's going to be some ARS questions as we get into the topics of today, pineapple, pizza, and CPD, mixing the right ingredients for success. Scott, if you can move on, just to give some housekeeping. Perfect. Okay. So the following CPD CME topics will be discussed throughout this next hour. We'll be focusing on innovation, communication, professional development, global IME, outcomes, and AI in CPD. Again, my name is Antonio Mio. I am with Daiichi Sankyo. I have been in CME IME for about 8 years or just over 8 years now, and have been a presenter on CME Palooza a handful of times, but looking forward to today. Amanda?
Yeah, good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where you're watching from. My name is Amanda Yamrogevich, Johnson in Poland. Thanks for that, Scott. I have been in CME for about 13 years, currently with Global Learning Collaborative, which is part of US Health Connect. Excited to be on this wonderful panel this morning. We're going to go through the rest of the rules of engagement for today's session. We'd love for you to participate in the polls, the ARS questions, because we're going to tee up throughout the session some personal preference questions to the audience that aren't CPD related, but maybe we have made some associations with them for some of those topics that Antonio mentioned in the beginning. So throughout the session, we're going to have questions pop up. Scott's going to tee them up. We ask that you submit your responses, and it'll get the juices flowing for us to start having some conversations, debates, discussions about these different topics in CPD. Griselda, would you like to go next to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Griselda Butler with Otska Pharmaceutical. I've been in independent medical education, medical communications for 28 years. And I've had the pleasure of presenting at CME Palooza in the past, but it's been a while. So thank you for having me back. And I'm looking forward to today's discussion. Audrey?
Oh, I guess I'm last. Okay, go. I am. Good morning. I am Audrey Torno. By day, I am managing partner at Excalibur Medical Education. My volunteer roles take me in a variety of other places, including being the current president of the Alliance for Continuing Education in the Health Professions. This is year 26, so here to encourage everyone that a single job can eventually turn into a career.
Very true.
All right. Do we want to go to the first ARS question now?
Yeah, let's hop in.
All right.
Question of the year.
Here is your first question. Pineapple on pizza. Love it or hate it? I guess there is no option for feeling ambivalent towards it.
No, I think this is one or the other, but
just know that we're judging your responses.
we aren't.
Can't wait to see what this one comes out as, although I'm shocked currently.
I don't know if these are true responses or people just trying to start a debate. It's also a consideration, but there is one correct way to eat pineapple pizza, and that's after you make it, you take it out of the oven and you throw it right into the trash. That's the only way you should be enjoying pineapple pizza.
Wow. What side are you really on it? Listen, I concur.
All right, I think that on that note, let's move on to the first topic. I think that's a very definitive response, and we might only be getting very definitive responses to those personal questions. The first topic that we are going to start with is blending innovation with tradition in CPD. I get to start, and I don't know if you'd call it a traditionalist, but I prefer my pizza pineapple-less. And I am going to perhaps be a little controversial to start to say, I kind of like my CPD that way too. At least the building blocks for CPD. I think when I was looking at this topic, I did a little digging, and I wanted to actually pose a few questions, hypothetical or not, but innovation, according to Merriam-Webster, is defined as a new idea, method, or device. So a new method, idea, or device. However, when I looked at some other definitions I found on Wikipedia, a definition that I kind of tend to lean towards, which is innovation is the practical implementation of ideas that result in the introduction of new goods or services or improvement in offering goods or services. And when I look at innovation in CPD, this is more what I tend to lean towards. I think innovation is subjective, and I think innovation should be used to enhance or improve what we're already providing. I think, Griselda, you are my counterpart on this, so I'll stop there just to see if you have any thoughts to that.
I do, and thank you for teeing that up, Amanda. I love that you gave those two definitions, and I'll take the position that sometimes we think something's innovation, and really there's not a lot that's new. The real difference is in the execution. So I'm not so far off from the way you're thinking, in that oftentimes there seems to be a desire to introduce something and say it's innovative or call it innovative, when in reality you're executing something that's existed before, but really the real innovation comes from the way it's implemented, the way it's executed, the way it's measured. the way the deliverable, shows up in what we do. And when it comes to CPD, to your point, have the fundamentals down. And don't feel like there's a requirement to stamp something with the term innovation, because if you're doing the basics extremely well, sometimes that's the innovation in itself.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I also wanted to provide an anecdote, because I do, and I think this industry likes innovation in the original definition. I think it's fun to do new things, to try new ideas, implement different solutions and programs, especially with the way technology is going. You're looking at different, virtual reality programs, different ways to develop programs online. But I think we also need to think about the audience and the uptake of what that looks like from our learners. We did a few years ago a wonderful program with Infograph Ed, and it was an infographic activity layering the information that was forcing the users to click through the activity in order to unlock that information and the layers. It was fantastic. But when we looked at the outcomes, we saw that we had a 50% bounce rate, which means that when learners hit the activity, 50% of them immediately left, which I took as they saw it and they said, this is not for me. I don't want to do this. However, of the 50% that stayed, we had an average of 30 to 45 minutes in the activity, which I think is pretty good in terms of a time and media metric. So I think that's a good way to look at this topic, to say we need to be blending. We need to have the fundamentals down. We need to be trying new things in order to, at the end of the day, our end game is to have an impactful program. So we need to be thinking about tradition and innovation at the same time.
Perfectly put.
Okay, so are we ready for our next question, or is there anything more on this topic?
Let's do it. Let's go move on.
Okay, next question. The best way to communicate, texting or calling?
Ooh.
What if I text you that I'm going to give you a call? Is that allowed? Just don't call me to tell me that you're going to send me a text, because that's weird.
Whoa.
So this is pretty much split right now.
Audrey, are you a texter or a caller?
Yes. It depends on the person. Some people tell me that calling and then leaving a voicemail message denotes my age. So,
we're gonna get into voicemails later, Audrey.
I know.
So, I agree.
It depends.
Yeah,
depends on the
my
person.
mother I call every day. Most people I text.
All right. I actually have heard that the younger generations are scared of picking up the phone. Have you heard this? Audrey, you have kids. What?
Yeah.
Will they call?
No. there's no. There's a certain level of anxiety, and I don't think that the last, the pandemic helped with that for certain age groups. It made them very technology reliant. And now that they know that they can do things without having to interact with someone, it feels a little bit safer. So you have to push them out of their comfort zone a little bit more.
That's fascinating. I'm both. I'm one of the situational. I love to get phone calls. Audrey knows I call her all the time. I just pick up the phone and ring her. But I think when it comes to industry, best practices, it's going to be a mixed bag, and I'd like to tee up our providers, our supporters on the session. Antonio, can I text you about a grant? What are your thoughts on optimal communications?
Put
you on the spot.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. No, I think we have to. Communication methods have certainly evolved and changed over time, and I think for the better, right? I think before COVID, I know you didn't ask about this, but before COVID, I never used video streaming services. It was either a phone or an in-person meeting. And I think by nature of changes in the environment that we were working in, now everything is Teams or Zoom, which is easily accessible. I think understanding, I text quite often for personal things. I don't think anything official like grant communication should be in a text message. In general, I think, even looking at the formats of email, I think there's a range of very formal emails to internal emails that becomes a text thread at times where, there's no greeting, it's just a message and sending off to somebody. So I think you just have to be cognizant of the type of communication you're trying to send and the method that you're utilizing it. But please do not text me grant related questions, because you may not get an answer, or you may get a very compliant response back to make sure everybody is documented that this is probably not the best form of communication. Grisella, do you have any?
I think the optimal industry and provider communication is the one we both agreed upon. I'm not going to lie to you and say that I don't get texts from individuals looking for answers to whether or not their grant's been approved. I'm happy to answer your question by letting you know that the formal communication about the status of your grant will come through the grant portal. But if we have a good relationship, I'm not offended by you reaching out. I do want to say that it's important that you understand and your audience, right? Know your audience. I'm a pretty formal person, so if you text me, "Hey, what's up?" I'm already like, "What are we doing? What's happening?" I'm not your bestie. We're not besties. Unless you're Audrey, we're besties, but that's different. We've been besties for a long time. I love to communicate effectively, and sometimes a text is the most effective way to communicate something very briefly, concisely, succinctly. We're done, and that's great. But any sort of formal communication, I'm going to put out there. You want that to come through the formal channel. You don't want my unofficial "you're approved" and then something happens. It's not approved. So that's a good enough reason right there to say, "Hey, I'm just checking in to see when I can find out what's happening," is different from "I need the answer to what's happening." And also, if you text me too many times about something, I'm going to stop responding to you and I may block you. So that's just me. Maybe that's a personal thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, go ahead. I saw something pop up. I missed it. It was I will text, but then initiate a WebEx.
Yeah.
Thank you, Will, for your contribution there. I agree. I think the channel is the most important part. I've been a part of organizations where we are not restrictive in communication with third parties seeking grant support, which I appreciate. I think there's a benefit to having open communications that are non-directive, not providing any internal strategy or educational needs. We welcome capabilities, presentations, outcomes, impact report presentations. Like, I think that's all important. It's just, again, thinking about the mode of communication and the type of response that you're looking for. I think things should be documented to also protect everybody, to say, hey, this was a proper conversation, and there was nothing. The communication was open, not directive, anything like that. But I also think the timing of the communication is important as well. I think it's becoming increasingly harder to have meetings at professional development meetings, for example, like at Alliance or AIS. I think these are important conversations when we're able to have them. And to me, I personally don't feel like I can give the proper respect and time to those conversations when there's 1,000 other things going on. And I want to be able to have a conversation with somebody. Also thinking about my reason for being there. It's about professional development. I owe it to my organization to make sure I'm going to sessions, but I also think being on panels, we owe it to our presenters to be in the room for them and to be able to listen to what they're having to say also.
Yeah, I agree. I think, we said text and emails and what have you, but I get a lot of communications asking for meetings as well. And I've been very lucky in that I laugh sometimes. I'm the only person you can reach about IME grants at OTSCA, but that's a benefit because everyone eventually will have access to me. But you can't have unfettered access to me, right? You can't just keep contacting me or calling me. We don't need to meet 5 times a year, probably. If you've got multiple programs happening, and absolutely, we're going to meet to talk through your outcomes. We're going to talk about interim status. We're going to see if you're on track with the programs. You can ask me questions about the status of my grant program, funding, et cetera. But there's an email for that, right? And then there's a meeting opportunity for some of the others. Maybe it's a quick text, right? Try to think about what's the best way to communicate what I'm trying to achieve. If I just need to know if the portal's open, send me a text. It's not a big deal, right? But if you want in-depth discussion about our strategy, you probably need to arrange a call. So yeah, I hear you. I think this is so important. And I don't want anybody to feel like they shouldn't be reaching out. I know a lot of people will say there are supporters who do not communicate with them. Just understand that that may be a compliance thing within their organization. It's not necessarily a personal thing or I'm not talking to you. It's compliantly, they may not be able to have a conversation. And that may sound extreme to you, but we operate within a business structure that is highly regulated, and so sometimes there are limitations.
So we did get a tongue-in-cheek question, I believe it's a tongue-in-cheek question from one of those supporters who don't like getting contacted. They said, if someone cold calls me with a grant question, is it appropriate for me to block their number? So, certainly there are some folks out there who do not like being communicated with. Derek actually texted me and said that he wants to tell people never to call him, which is
he's just putting it out there. Yeah.
About anything.
That's
I thought maybe that was Derek's question.
I mean, you could do whatever you want, right?
I did see a comment pop up from Amanda that she has received text messages of pictures of LOAs, and I think that's incredibly frightening. And I would not recommend moving forward with development after getting a text picture of an LOA.
Okay.
If I could just take maybe the provider perspective for a second, and for those in the supporter seat who have not been in the provider seat, we're in a difficult position a lot of the time when we don't have visibility into asking questions, compliant questions for that matter. A lot of the times I would like to say we're not trying to get into your mind and try to sell to you. We are truly trying to have compliant discussions to make what we're doing a little bit easier. And so, a cold call to a supporter and blocking is it's kind of sad to hear to me, because we truly are trying to, put together great educational. I do have Derek's number. I'll put it in the
chat.
I just want to put that out there. It's a difficult position to be in, because if we are able to have compliant questions and conversations, it's really helpful. So I just wanted to put that out there.
I would also chime in. You ask the question because certain organizations issue work phones. And so you may, and then utilization of that work phone, people may have really good boundaries and say, this is the phone that I use for work communication. It's 9 to 5. It's Monday through Friday. Don't expect to send me something 7 o'clock on a Friday night and think that there's going to be an answer coming in. So I think it's that level of insight and asking up front, what's your preferred method of hearing from me?
I think that's great.
Yep. Yeah. And to that point, because I do have meetings, I think I've had questions where maybe I'm not 100% comfortable or I can't share that, and have been open about that as well, and have gotten no pushback saying, I understand, thank you. But just being transparent, I think is key. But I'll understand, to Rosalda's point, I think a lot of industry works in, within the the confines of legal and compliance and the direction that we're given. But I think it's okay to say, I'm not allowed to have conversations with you, and just make it known. I think that's the safest way to kind of operate. But
yeah. And I like Michelle's comment that compliant conversations can be beneficial for everyone.
Correct. Including
100%.
our HCP learners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, you ready for the
We
next
spent
question?
a lot of time on that one, but that was a good conversation.
So there are a few people who are not using Poll Everywhere and are actually trying to respond to these ARS questions via text. So for those of you who are doing that, please don't. I mean, you can, but it doesn't really we don't put that into the results here. So please, if you are wanting to respond, just use the Poll Everywhere app or the web link. Using our text line really doesn't really help us very much with these. So thank you. But here's your question. I like to work out alone or in group sessions.
Being the assumption that you'd like to work out.
I guess so.
C is no. I like to work out. No.
Oh, we have a lot of loners. I like it. I'm a lone wolf. I love to it's my time. It's my time to think, to go out, to kind of just get it done. Griselda, I think you had mentioned you like to do group sessions. You said something about 20 years with the same workout group.
No, since 2014.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's
5:30 a.m.
11 years.
Yeah.
5:30 a.m. Same group. You know, some might say we haven't made any progress. But I disagree. I can bench press quite a lot. But anyway, yeah, I digress. But yeah, I like my group session, but I love to run alone.
Well, let me take that with it, and we're going to pivot to talking a little bit about professional development and volunteerism. It is both, I would tell you. It is something that you need to do alone and in a group. Your network won't grow without making connections, and there will be huge value for you and your professional development when you have additional resources in the form of individuals that you feel you can have a brain trust with and hit up with conversations and questions if you are running into a problem, or if you're looking to advance your career, or you're looking to expand your skill set, and drawing on all of those. But there is so much that you need to do on your own, which is saying yes to certain opportunities, volunteering, or saying yes to speaking on panels, just so that you can ultimately feed what you are going to need moving forward throughout your career. Within your organization, you may or may not be provided professional development, but that shouldn't stop you from seeking it on your own. If your organization does provide professional development, recognize that that's an amazing thing that they are taking the time out to offer you. They're investing in you as an employee, and they want to bring your skill level and career along because there's a benefit for them as well. But I would counter that with, there are going to be times where an organization cannot support your professional development. Maybe they cannot provide financial resources for you to travel to a professional development conference, or take or maintain a certification. And that's where you need to take particular ownership on your own, be that lone wolf, and you need to determine if it's valuable for you. I've very often heard people say things like, oh, well, my company won't pay for it. And I'm like, well, that's a circumstance. The difference is it valuable enough for you to go on your own? Because if you are to do that, I will say, I had it at multiple organizations where if the professional development was meaningful for me, then I told them, great, I'm going to go and do that, even though you can't support it. And then they recognize that I'm willing to put in, and they will potentially meet you halfway in the future. But when people are only looking internally, that can present that it's only worth it to you if your organization foots the bill, and that means you're not growing at all. So I'm going to kick over to Antonio and say, volunteerism, isn't it an easy thing?
Yes, especially within our organizations. But joking aside, I think there are opportunities for volunteerism, and I think that's where, to your point, Audrey, you have these association in these meetings, which are a little bit more formalized learning, whereas volunteerism can be more cost effective. It's yes, William, exactly. Mentoring, doesn't necessarily cost anything. I think mentoring, being a mentee, finding somebody that you can learn from. I think networking, building those relationships, earning and banking social capital, it's all just as important to your own growth and development as attending annual conferences or listening into CME Palooza sessions and getting insights from other people. I think where it could be a challenge is getting involved, asking where do I start? How do I even get involved? Personally, for many years, I sat on the bench, and I think there was some imposter syndrome, maybe, or just trying to understand where I fit into this. Do I have anything valuable to share? Am I contributing anything new to the discourse? And it took some time for me to feel confident to say, I think I have ideas that are worth sharing, but also maybe not. And there are times, maybe some people think I don't have ideas worth sharing, but contributing, I like participating, I like volunteering, and that's just another access. You don't always have to be on a panel necessarily, or that it is a good way to continue to grow yourself and share your ideas that you're having so others can benefit as well.
I just wanted to add to that, if that's okay, because Antonio, I have a similar situation where, I've been in the industry for a while, but I was feeling like, well, what do I have to provide? It was, I think imposter syndrome is real. And so I think getting involved with maybe smaller groups to start, getting your foot wet with maybe member sections as part of the alliance or what have you. But I think what honestly changed my perspective on volunteerism and getting involved with the CPD community is from a past faculty member I worked with. I think I can share his name because it's a positive reflection, which is I worked with Dr. Keith Ferdinand, a cardiologist out of New Orleans for years. And every time we would work with him in a faculty capacity, we would thank him, and he would always say the same thing. He would say, "Happy to serve, Amanda." And I think when you look at it as you're serving your community and you're giving back instead of receiving, I think it changes the mentality and the perspective you have. And I think it's just going to make the community better as a whole.
I love that. I think
Yeah.
that's a great way to look at it. Everybody's on a different journey. So I would just say that concept of servant leadership, don't forget, professional development sounds maybe in some ways nebulous, but the volunteering and the proactive approach you take about your own career development, your personal development. I don't want to leave, this is professional development and growth, but I don't want to leave out personal development, because you might be achieving high heights professionally, but if you're not growing in parallel on a personal level, you likely won't reap the full benefits, and you won't really enjoy the journey either. So try to match energy when it comes to your personal and professional development. And the other thing I would say about volunteerism, I over volunteer sometimes, and that is detrimental to it is detrimental to your journey to feel that you have to say yes to things all the time, or that yes is the road to, I don't know, some end, right? It's the means to an end. You're going to get some sort of recognition or something at the end. Volunteerism can be very proactive and purposeful and should be intentional, right? Do things you love to do, want to do, new experiences you want to try. Don't get caught up in, they've asked me again and I should probably do it. If you've moved on from that and you want to grow in a different way, do it. Suzette, do something different, right? If you're ready to do that. I am a big fan of do something different. I've been starting to do some different things over the last couple of years, other organizations that have become very important to me. And it's been very fulfilling. And it's leading me some different ways professionally as well. So the last thing I will say, there's mentorship, and if you're doing professional development, growth, and volunteerism right, there's sponsorship. Be the person who brings somebody else along, right? Reach back, reach forward, reach out in whatever direction, but definitely bring other people along. If your growth is solely dependent on you staying in your lane and focusing solely on you, that's not really growth, right? So definitely look for opportunities to bring others along, if they'll let you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And what I was saying before about there's ample opportunities and not everything has to be on the forefront, but also when you get to a point to feel comfortable to say, I participated and I need to step away, and having that comfort with yourself, but also with your peers that you're serving with. And I think there's a lot of mutual respect there. And then how do you get involved? Bringing somebody with you. I'll also share a name. Riaz is amazing and kind of voluntold me to be on AIS planning committee, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. It's been a few years, but I wouldn't have known how to get involved or even be comfortable enough to say, I think I want to be on this committee without having a peer come to me and say, do you want to help out? I think this is a great opportunity. So I'm grateful for those as well. But for all of us to keep in mind, there are probably people who want to grow and to learn. Bring them along.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to move on to the next question, the next topic. So here is our next audience response question.
I am judging so hard right now. These responses better look good.
I have to share.
I texted Griselda last week. I was traveling and I'm like, I just feel all of the guilt if I put my suitcase.
Come on.
This is the impetus for this session started with this question in January. I have to share. It was a heated debate at the Alliance about whether you put your luggage on your bed to pack or not. So
I am so disappointed.
This all started with this question. So you're welcome, everybody. I think there was a lot of
side we're on.
Yeah.
I think it was I said absolutely not. But then a good point was made, which is I do let my dog on my bed. But I don't see them as the same. I don't know.
You're not the same. Your luggage travels through airports and public bathrooms.
Isn't the dog park a public bathroom in theory?
Not for me, it's not. Not for me,
Griselda, don't say that. Don't say that. All right, okay. Griselda, I think you're teeing this one up.
I am. So global IME, involvement, compliance, reach, formats, experts. Just a show of hands that I can't see. Raise your hand if you think you're a global IME expert. Because if you are, and I know there are a handful, we all need to learn from you, because this topic raised a lot of questions for me as someone newly venturing into truly what I think and what my company defines as global IME, to folks who've been doing it for years, to that in between kind of understanding of global that may lean toward, oh, this program's happening outside the US, so it's a global IME program, or my online education reaches a global audience, isn't it global IME? Those questions hang in the air and often don't get definitive answers because we're all doing it slightly differently. And so when I think about, was I ready to move into the global space? I work for an organization that, we have assets that are now fully in the global space, where I will be in a position to help launch new opportunities outside of the US and to fund education outside of the US. And that has been a huge challenge for me to figure out what I don't know, right? I don't even know what I don't know. And listening and talking to experts, bringing in experts talking to my global counterparts in their countries and regions about the restrictions, the regulations, the compliance requirements, the needs of their audiences, the healthcare environment outside of the US, which is markedly different. All of those are factors to be considered. And I don't profess to be anywhere near an expert, nor do I think that, a couple of years of doing the work under my belt has made me any more. Maybe I'm slightly more knowledgeable, but I'm not confident yet in my understanding. And so I think coming from one supporter perspective, the first thing I tried to assess was, do I have the capability and resources to truly run a global IME shop, right? Can I support my stakeholders? And I think that's the same question on the other side. If you are a provider of education, do you have the resources, and whether it's intellectual knowledge and capabilities, do you have the global counterparts and relationships? Do you have global distribution? Do you understand the regulatory environment? All of those things, all of those questions, before you ever say, I'm going to do global IME, there's so many questions to answer. And I literally spent, 18 months answering as many of those questions as I could before I ventured into the very first program in conjunction with my counterparts outside of the US. And it's been a learning experience. And that first one did not go well, FYI. And the program went well, but the lack of knowledge on both sides and the kind of force-fitting US model into an ex-US program didn't go over well at all. And so lots to be learned there. I don't think I had an answer to this, but what I want to say is that don't feel bad that you're not an expert. There are very few. Please rely on people who do know the space. There's some really good alliance resources. Very recently, some webinars, and there'll be more. There were excellent sessions at this year's annual conference. Tap into those resources. And before you venture into the space, sit down and assess, do we want to do this? Do we understand what global truly is and means? Is there a market for this? Because in some cases, my affiliates do their own global IME. They don't need me. Right? I don't need to interfere with them. And for the ones who don't and want my support and help, I can help them, right? But from a provider's perspective, this may not be everybody's remit, right? Everybody's not going to do this. So I would just say, really sit down and ask yourself, do you have the necessary resources to move forward in that space?
Yeah, I don't have much to add other than to echo. I like what you said, which is you actually, in this, when it comes to global IME, you don't know what you don't know. I think that some organizations look at it and say, oh, we can just distribute globally. And it's a much deeper and more dynamic, taking on of global IME is much more involved than folks realize. We've been doing at GLC Global for some time, and we still are learning all the time, the different nuances. I think what my recommendation is to start small, maybe do a pilot if you want to get into the global space. If anybody can name this movie, Aim Small, Miss Small, you need to make sure that you have the capabilities, the infrastructure, the reach. That's kind of why this title slide has so much involved, because there's so much to think about. So I don't know if there's much else I can add to what you said, Griselda. I have one anecdote that I had written down before this to share, which I thought was really interesting, which is we've learned a lot in our global education journey at GLC, and we've started to look at, when we distribute, we've been doing translations, we've been doing regional perspectives to really get into the different regions, specifically within our target audience. But what we've been piloting is translations in those regions, in those areas in their language, But now we've started to use AI to actually modify the speaker so that it looks like they are speaking in that language. And we did a comparison in outcomes, and we found that translations versus this in-language commentary, we call it, the in-language commentary, when it looks like the speaker is actually speaking that language, higher engagement levels, higher time in media, and a better impact in knowledge and competence. And so I think that the tools that we have are allowing us to do better in global, but we still need to be sensitive to all of the other components. The last thing I will say, and I don't want to get political, but based on the current administration and where the US stands from a World Health perspective, I think we need to be even more sensitive to what we're doing from a global education perspective right now, based on what the world views the US as in terms of a leader in education. So I just want to throw that out there, that now even more than ever, we need to be really sensitive to the way that us as accreditation in the US distributes global IME.
I agree. If I could just even put a finer point on the concept of the global perspective, some of the education that I've been able to fund outside of the US, we've really had to consider and think about not just the language translation, the regional and local cultural differences in the way that they want to be communicated with, in the way that healthcare is delivered in that country. And those are nuances that you're not going to pick up by simply saying, oh, I can distribute my US-based education to this global audience. You really have to, and it does require more work and more effort, but it's worth it, because you're right. When they know when you're BSing them, right? They're like, oh, great, thanks for this US program. They know. And so we also had the benefit of getting really great feedback of having cultural nuance incorporated into the delivery of the education that we fund.
That's great.
Here's what we were preparing yesterday before we move on real quick. Griselda, you made a point about all education is local. And I think it's not just the nuances of cultural, but also thinking about where they are, the education that you're trying to support, guidelines that are sometimes country or regional based, making sure that messaging is not just copy and pasted, because it may not resonate across the world.
You want to learn from your peers. You want to learn from your patients. You want to learn from your community, So yeah, we could speak at length about this, but all right.
We'll go to our next question. I know we got about 8 minutes left, so I have a couple of topics left. So I'm going to try to push you guys along. All right. So we talked about this a little bit earlier. Voicemail. Or auto delete.
So that's what's been happening to my voicemail.
Exactly.
Auto delete. Oh.
I love seeing all the, currently, I love seeing all the listen, because I think the difference is if someone takes the time to leave me a voicemail message, I will listen to it. Responding to it is a different category here. But I'm not offended by a voicemail message as opposed to another form of communication.
Just a thought, is not a missed call kind of like a voicemail? Like when you see missed call from Audrey.
Griselda, no.
I will just be very honest and save you all time. 99% of the time that is not being listened to. And by the time I do get to it,
Andrea,
it probably doesn't, it's not even relevant anymore. So like text me, please don't leave. You have a better chance of reaching me by smoke signal.
Wow.
Okay. I'm going to break out my carrier pigeon, just so you know.
Well, thank you all. I think we just wanted to ask that question. I don't know how it really ties into outcome, but just because. So when we were preparing,
are you using them? Are you listening? Are you using?
There you go. Are you using? Thank you. There it is. So we as we were preparing could have taken this in many numerous kind of directions, but I think briefly what shocked me the most as we were preparing was that the question was asked from the provider perspective, like, are outcomes being used? And I think it's not the question that's shocking. I appreciate the question. It's more that there could be instances where maybe the perception is that outcomes and impact reporting is not being used. I think at the very least, at least on the industry side and somebody that's granting funding for education, it's a metric of success. We are spending funding on these tactics. Again, at least internally, we can report that the strategies and the objectives that we're outlining for this education are being met in some capacity. That's bare minimum. I do want to just reassure the conversations that we have as supporters through our member sections, through Alliance, for example, outcomes are being used. There is just a recognition that many IME teams are one or two people, and they're also wearing multiple hats. So the communication back to the provider may not be, hey, we thank you for the outcomes and here's how we used it, which may or may not even be compliant, but the recognition that we are taking that data and maybe understanding that when we reach out to you with more questions, that is a recognition of us interpreting and analyzing those outcomes and using them in our own way. I'm sure there are many people who can attest to the fact that our team at Daiichi, we are often asking follow-up questions. We want to make sure we're understanding the data you're providing, that we're telling a story that aligns to the education and the impact and the output of that education. I mean, we are asking questions on a micro level. Data is cheap, and we want to be able to gather what you're sharing with us, but making it insightful and impactful for our teams on our side to be able to develop strategy. It's not just about taking victory laps about the education that we supported and the good work that you're all doing. It's about driving strategy, building plans to continue that education and be able to help them take action going forward. So yes, we are using outcomes, I promise. Yes, our internal teams do appreciate the information that we're sharing with them based on the education that has been supported. And yes, we do want that data. We want more data. And we appreciate you helping us kind of interpret that data and how to use that. We're doing it already on our side of things. But I've had providers say, oh, I didn't know you'd want that. Yes, I may not know what to do with it yet. But the more you give to me, the more I can advocate for the great work that CME and providers are doing and third-party grantees are doing with the funding that we're providing.
Mic drop. Perfect.
Absolutely.
I love it.
I want to hear the provider perspective on what raises the concern about.
Yeah, I think from a provider perspective, we have it's interesting because I think we see two different situations where we will be able to send our outcomes reports and we'll be able to talk to them and present the information. We want to be able to tell you what we have found. And a lot of the times it feels like we're just sending it into the ether and we don't hear back and we're not sure if it's being used, and we want that opportunity, right? And so I think that it's difficult from a provider perspective sometimes to understand the importance of them with some supporters because we're not getting that feedback, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would echo, it's more of the how. The more we understand how you are using them, the better we can meet your needs and dive deeper to provide you more. And if the question is we're not sure how you're using it, then we're going to give you as much information we can, but we can't possibly generate all of the different permutations that data can provide us. And so I think some of us are just looking to be more helpful so that that how question becomes critical.
Okay. That's really helpful.
So now we've got about 2 minutes left. So you have one more topic and one more question. So we're going to quickly go through this. Here is our question. Text messages, use emojis or write in full sentences?
While this is coming up, I'll just add to the last question that anybody who's received a grant from OTSCA knows that I'm going to pester you for a minimum first 3-month interim call and the final outcomes review meeting. So they're probably like, yeah. But I I hope that you know that not only am I using them, but I think it's important if you can compliantly, I tell providers when I'm using their outcomes data.
I'm so
I tell
surprised.
them I have a monthly global medical affairs strategic team meeting for every asset and every indication. So I'm using your outcomes, even if I only take the first 3 slides, which is why I'm so persnickety about how you deliver the report to me, because I may need to quickly grab those 3 slides, but then when we sit down and talk, we can go through it in more detail. But yeah, it's getting used. And again, every company is different, have some grace, right?
Sure.
I love here that the chat is still all about voicemail and not a lot of people are using emojis.
I use emojis all the time. I love them. They are, if I could communicate only with memes and GIFs and emojis, I would. This last topic, which arguably could have filled this entire hour, is the use of AI in CPD. And since we are right at the end of time, I hope panelists don't mind. I'm going to change this response, which is, I think we should all provide the top thing we're using AI for, right, in our current organizations or personal use or what have you. I can go first and I can say that I am using AI every single day, and it is helping me be incredibly more creative. I'm using it to ideate. I saw a term that said the democratization of creativity using AI because of all of the different things that you can bring in and skills that you don't have. And so I'm using it every day to be more creative, bounce ideas off of for putting different educational programs together. Antonio,
I can jump in there and go.
Or Audrey.
I'm going to go with character limited fields and portals to get you there faster. But also I feel like, it's initial things like working titles or just helping. It really is like playing that game with another person. Like, give me something that includes the following, but doesn't sound cheesy. Those variations, it really helps you create things in different voices. Give me something more serious. Give me something more playful. And so it just really gets the juices flowing. So I find it to be a great tool in the morning.
Antonio?
Currently utilizing it to just kind of help assess qualitative data and give an outline for further analysis. We're not using that to report to leadership, but it helps us start the conversation and start the analysis.
Awesome. And I would say I'm using it every day, mostly to consolidate large quantities of information and consolidate them into briefings or timelines for internal use. And then secondarily, we have a homegrown AI system that we built here at Utska, and I'm using that right now to create business use cases for IME.
Okay, great. Well, thank you guys. We did get a number of questions that came in, but for sensitive time, I'm actually going to email them to you guys, so you guys can respond and post them with the agenda for this session once we're done. So very quickly to wrap things up, it is now time for the CME Palooza scavenger hunt. So you can go to the website of the promotion sponsor, the Academy for Continued Healthcare Learning, look for the CME logo, click on it and see what happens. So here's the URL at the bottom of your screen, www.achleducation.com. We do have a survey for CME Palooza Spring. I know some people complete it, it kind of goes up and down. If you can please complete the survey, it does help us to kind of plan for the future. And finally, just look on our live page to click on the link for the next session. It will start here in about 30 seconds. So with that, I would like to thank Antonio, Amanda, Audrey, and the only non-A, Griselda, for this great session. And we will see everyone soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.